All right, hi guys, doing? We hopping in the second Peter's review. This is part. Oof, I think it's part 9. First things first, make sure you like the video. I switch the screen too fast, whatever. Exit full screen. Scroll a little bit, like it. Full screen back up. You feel me? I just got faded. Just got sliced. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so we left off verse 12, right? So we obviously got to do our good works in front of the Gentiles, not in the sense that you know, not so that they see us and think good, but more so when when we get challenged, they see our good works and they think, oh, right, that's Jesus. Having a conversation honest among the Gentiles, whereas when they speak against you as evildoers, that by your good works they shall behold and glorify God in the day of visitation, right? So not necessarily on the fact of like, oh, we're showing out for Jesus, like we're performative Christians, but it's just like, yeah, no, that dude's a solid dude. Like I don't really know what you're talking about. But also when God shows up in the day of visitation, he's like, nah, you good. You have faith and you did some good works on top of that faith, so you're good, right? You was gonna be good with the faith anyway, but like doing the good work, we got your rewards for you. You know what I'm saying, right? So 13. Now, Pastor Paul made very sure, he made full well sure to start talking about this word submittance, right? Because it matters, right? It's a word we hear all the time, right? Submit to your boss, respect your elders, basically submit to your elders, right? Even and I don't want to, if you in the red pill space, whatever the case is, they like to talk a lot about, oh, you want your wife to submit to you, right? You want your woman to submit to you, right? I just watch this stuff and I'm just like, they got interesting takes, interesting conversations that come up because it's always built upon these like religious ideals, but taken to a worldly extent. So I'm like, where does the line get drawn before like, oh yeah, your woman should submit to you, but also like, she's not your slave. She's your side. She's your helper. She's not your literal slave to cook and clean and make you a sandwich. Like she's still there doing her thing, but her thing is with you, and it's our thing now. Versus you listen to every single thing I say. No, is you consider her like be a man. Like she's a helper still. She run the house like you do. She runs other stuff like you do. She's not just there just to literally just be an extension of you. Like no, come on now, right? Anyway, so he talks about this level of submittance, right? And it pops up a lot in a lot of these verses, right? Verse 13, right? We're gonna see it again in a different way in verse 17, right? Listed as honoring people, right? We're gonna see it in verse 18, servants be subject. We're gonna see it in chapter 3 in verse 7 and verse 8, right? Live with them in an understanding way. It talks about in verse 7 of chapter 3. Verse 8 says, have unity of mind, right? All in all, right? We even see in a title up here, honor authority, right? But overall, the purpose is we're told to get away with, or my bad, get along with each other, slash, live in harmony with each other. Right? He talks about all these different ways about like living in harmony, so to speak, right? Obviously, 3:8. Well, I can't say obviously. Sorry, we're not in chapter 3, but in chapter 3, he brought up the example that he'd like skip forward just a little bit in terms of he wanted to get the teaching across. He said, have unity of all mind. And in the NIV, it says, finally, all of you live in harmony with each other, which he said he used to teach out of the NIV, but even still, for this specific verse, he likes the NIV's renditioning better because the word live in harmony with each other, or whatever that word was used in that context, comes from harmphron. My bad, homophron. I don't really remember how to pronounce it. I just wrote it down. It's not necessarily used here. We got hypotazo here, tasso, whatever the case is here. Not was there, but in chapter 3, verse 8, it comes from homophron in Latin to the Greek, which is armos, which is where in English we get harmony, right? And then he gave the definition in the sermon around 340. The combination, so this is the definition of harmony, the combination of musical notes set in such a way as to produce chords and chord progressions having a pleasing effect, right? And we see sing and make joyous noise to the Lord. And even then, it's like having a pleasing effect, live in harmony. When you're harmonizing with something, it's joyous, it's good. We're told to sing and make a joyous noise for the Lord at times, right? These instruments, people was praying with their tambourines. They used a different word in the Old Testament, but you know what I'm saying. Their cymbals, their harps. David played the harp. All that type of stuff. And so, harmonizing in music is just a pleasant thing, right? It's pleasing to the ears. It sounds nice. That's what we do. And he said it's even pleasing in people, right? It's not just a music thing, but it's also pleasing when people get along in harmony, right? That's what human society was built upon: harmony, civilizations, collaborations, cities, towns, countries, right? And to an extent, there's always like some little disagreements, all in all. But the overall theme, if I can speak properly today, is that harmony is pleasant and it's good. Right? We like that. And specifically, he gave the example of it in marriage, right? But then he gave the, you know, I'm not too into this, right? If there's any film majors or film geeks or whatever the case is that knows about this, like, sure, obviously in films and in things, people put music behind it to help set tones, right? Obviously, in a horror movie, you want that when they're like running away from the killer, because it's like, oh, they're running away, and they got the music to match. Versus like when you got a nice wedding, obviously in a wedding they're not playing freaking party rock anthem. At most weddings, I guarantee you somebody did it, but they're doing like or whatever the marriage one. I've never been to a wedding in my life. Can you imagine that? 21 years old and I've never been to a wedding. I one time asked my uncle, I was like, yo, when's Cuzzo getting married? And he's like, I'm gonna tell you said that. I'm like, don't say that. Don't make it sound like I'm rushing. I just want to know. I want to know if you know. I want to know if you know, because I ain't been to a wedding yet. I'm not trying to have my first wedding be like, some random person. My mom's just like, oh, come to this person. And I'm like, who are you? Like, it's like one of my mom's cousins, like third weddings. And I'm like, who are you, firstly? Secondly, why are you getting married for a third? All right, sounds very judgmental. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But the point being, what was the point? The point being, marriages have this music attached to them that's like, oh, it's happy, and then through the trying to ubiquitousness of the wedding music, it became associated with, oh, covenant, joining, union, together, happy vibe. That's what the music now hopefully resonates with people when they hear it. It's like, oh, that's the wedding music, right? It's like a happy time. It's a celebration. Usually weddings are celebrations. I don't know if anybody thinks of weddings as non-happy, right? But anyway, back to the film geek thing. He said that sometimes in movies they'll put the good music, or like a happy music, or not happy music, but like they'll put positive notes with negative notes, like high notes with like low notes, and it's supposed to create this feeling of not uneasiness, so to speak, but it can be used to set specific tones, right? And the term that it was used was discordant or discordance, right? And that's when you have high note, low note, whatever, and it's like two juxtaposing themes for the audio in the movie. All right, meant to display something. I don't know. I'm not the film geek. Y'all can let them know in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. That's the example he used. He was on radio. He probably gets it a little bit more than me. I don't know. Right, but he said it's the same in the home, the church, or the workplace. Right, you can have people that are doing one thing up high, some people doing one thing down low. It's creating a discordance, right, an uneasy feeling. You can have some people down low, and both people are down low, and you just got ultimate negative environment. You can have both people up high, and you're in harmony, right? And I'm not saying like, actually no, the high and low, it makes sense because like both ways is harmony, right? You got all low notes with a low singer, it's gonna work. Got the high notes with a high singer, it's gonna work. You got the everything mishmash. You got the high notes with the low notes, and the singer who can't even sing, and you looking at him like, what we got going on here, right? There's no harmony, and he said a lack of harmony is just overall gonna bring displeasure, right? So then he talks about the tone for the rest of this. Now, I don't know about the rest of the letter, but at least for where we're at in chapter 2 and a little bit of chapter 3, where we're going to talk about governments, husbands, wives, masters, and servants, right? Which is all stuff that would pertain crazy to them back then, right? Governments especially, right? You may think like, oh, we got governments nowadays. Not like they did. Not like they did. We get into some history. Husbands and wives, that's very practical for nowadays. Masters and servants, we don't really have slavery in the United States anymore. But trust and believe, slavery still exists. And if you didn't know that, educate yourself, right? I'm not very educated on the topic, so I can't sit and tell you like I'm not gonna be the one to do it because I need to be the one to do it for myself. But like, you get the point. Anyway, so point being, we love to harmonize, but he said it takes a lot of work, and we're always not willing to pay the price for that harmony. And sometimes it calls for, what is he talking about in verse 13? If I scroll back up, submittance. right? It's about submittance. And for most people, he said, submitting is a dirty word. It's not good. You don't want to talk about it, right? I've heard that in my own life, and I'm just like, it's not crazy. Just telling somebody like I get it, like it sounds bad, but also it's not the worst thing in the world, right? It's not the worst thing in the world because at the time, what they used it for was mainly in military, right? And he said it meant to become fundamentally responsive to your leader, basically saying when a person is high up in power, especially when it comes to something like military. Oh, I didn't show y'all last time. Look, I substituted at a school, and the students were doing henna. It was on Eid, which was yesterday, and one of like none of the Muslim students were actually there. So like one of the other girls, like a Chinese girl, I think, was doing henna, and I was like, oh, can I get some whatever? I got the three crosses. So I was just like, it's kind of cool. Yeah. Anyway, but they use it in military, and it's like when a person high up has to give orders, it's like it needs to follow down the chain of command. There could be a lack of trust with it, but we're going to talk about later in the chapter that it's like God put that person in position of power for a reason. You have to submit to that position of power, and especially when it comes to something like military, you got one dude, couple dudes, a whole like squad tune. What's the platoon, squad, squadron, quadrant formation doing their own thing. You cook the rest of the team. You'll cook the rest of the team because guess what? You get taken out. Now they have access to your personnel. Now they got access to your weapons, your uniforms. They got access to everything. You know what I'm saying? In the military, that stuff matters. So it's usually used in military, but now it's not. And we're gonna get into it a little next time. All right, it's gonna be the end of the video. Hope you guys have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.